Hello, chatto, it's Sundats, and coming up today on Building a Nation with Sirens of Malta, my voice is gone. What the hell was that? Apologies, it's been so long since the last recap video. Do not worry, you haven't actually missed anything. I was just away for a bit, then unwell for a bit, which as you can probably tell, I'm still recovering from at the moment. And then FM25 was delayed for 5 months, which has kind of just thrown things into a bit of disarray. Had to basically restructure and rethink all of the content that I had planned, the first of which you'll be seeing very soon, which is a complete and comprehensive guide to how to run, maintain, and set up a loan farm, because I know a lot of you that have been doing Building a Nation saves have really struggled with that element of the game, so worry not, that's coming soon. But today, I have two especially outrageous things that I need to catch you up on. The VODs, of course, are on the second channel. You know the drill. So we came into season 27 of Building a Nation with Sirens of Malta, off the back of the disappointment of losing our second Champions League final to Manchester United, which has given us one hell of a casus belli for revenge, specifically on them. The biggest downside to us this year is that we'd be sharing the Maltese European stage with two sides that were either untested entirely in Europe or historically woeful. I'm looking at you, Sleemer Wanderers. So a lot of the success this season would heavily hinge upon what they were able to do in Europe for us. But we did really decide to push the boat out this season and start really splashing some cash around, including making our record transfer signing. But in order to do that, as always, we had to get some guys out of the club to free up a little bit of money and wages and just general vibes, honestly. The first of whom was Martin Hoydal, who's gone to Altai. He was a player that we kind of liked. He had that lovely little loan spell at Goodyear, but then came back and really couldn't slot into our side. So we felt the need to get the money, get the 13 million quid for him, and he's out of our way now. He's earning not even that much money where he is, honestly, but the main thing is that we got some money ourselves. We also cashed in on the failed transfer of Jetro Janga, a player that we were very excited about during our season of signing every single striker in Europe, but in the end, this one has not worked out for us. Despite him being very, very good, we just couldn't get him into the first team often enough, couldn't find him a sensible loan, so in the end we had to take £16 million from Ajax, and I can pretty much guarantee that he's going to end up moving to Real Madrid in around about 3 years, and it's going to come back to bite us somehow. Another cash in while you can type of transfer was Hirotoyo Umiguchi, who I'm pretty certain literally signed for us last season for around £10 million, but in the end we were able to move him on to Bayer Leverkusen for 18.25. Again, he's a really good player, couldn't get any game time here, and it was only causing squad issues. It was then also time to say goodbye to Seydou Kwasi Awur. He'd come back in, become our record, well, wage earner. I think he was the first player at the club that actually earned over £100,000 a week, but he didn't really play much for us during that spell, so we were actually incredibly able to flip him back to Benfica for £25.5 million, which actually recouped a lot of the money we paid for him, and he's now retired there this season. But the biggest out of the bunch is somewhat of a sad one, but I think it was time. 15 years at the club Gert Gillet had given us, and 15 good years as well. Like, he'd cost us around £15 million, which at the time I believe was a record transfer for us. But when January came along, we realised he only had, I think, 18 months left on his deal. He'd fallen way down the pecking order for Sirens this season due to the emergence of Jose Otavio and to various other players you're going to see soon, so I felt it was the perfect time to move him on, and we were actually able to bid him up all the way from around about 20 million by engaging in a bidding war with Al Ahly, obviously, or Al Hilal rather, Benfica and Inter to get him all the way up to £38.5 million. He's also now the second highest paid player in world football. So, you know, he's having a nice time. He's had a lovely time at Sirens, won a few Champions Leagues, and now he gets to move on and earn an absolute king's ransom. But of course, that means that money was there for us to be able to spend on new players, and that is exactly what we have done this season. I think it's about 160 million on players that we've spent that have actually joined us, and then a further 50 to 60 on guys that have not yet joined us. That's how much we've spent. The first of the ins, though, was Jamie Parkin, and this is actually the second Canadian international goalkeeper that we've signed in the space of the last 2 or 3 years, which means Canada, you have a hell of a bright future, specifically between the sticks. But he's their current number one now as Amadou Drame. Unfortunately, he was on loan at Auxerre from us this season to develop a little bit, but yeah, he's done his cruciate in. So Jamie Parkin has moved up the order. We just need to find him a loan. 7.75 million from Toronto FC. I think it's good money, well spent. More money that I think is pretty well spent is Hosselu, who was coming from Athletic Club for £7 million. Again, he was just one of those players that we liked the look of. He had a relatively cheap release clause. Say relatively cheap, it's okay at 7 million. More importantly, though, he was able to go on loan to Luton, and there's a guy with 1.5 CA playing in the second tier. And the thing is, Luton haven't even been promoted, so there's every chance I think that he could do another year there to really start to boost those numbers up and give him a great chance to develop, although playing with better players certainly would help him. If that potential is correct, though, we could have a hell of a player here. But now comes to one of the two tentpoles of the outrageous things I need to show you in this video, because we were just looking through the next gen list. As you do every year, it's a great chance to do a bit of scouting. Saw a guy who was 19 playing, I think he was 18 actually, playing for Lanús over in Argentina, and thought, you know what, screw it, we can't really see all of his attributes, but the ranges we could see suggested that there might be a player there. We weren't ready. Bang. This is Maximiliano Moser. I don't understand. So bear in mind, I think you better shoot on. Okay, it's only 3 stars there. So he was even worse than that before when he actually joined us, I believe. I think he was 2.5 star when he came in, which was way higher than expected. Now we could see some of his attributes, but we decided for 4.5 million or 4.8 million, it was worth us just taking him now in case anyone else tried to circle around him. Although I must admit, at the time, I don't believe anyone else was interested. Look at the state of this guy. These attributes are just shy of the kind of the attributes that Reynoso is on. And Reynoso is 29 years old, remember, a fully developed player who is not going to get any better. Maximiliano Moser, on the other hand, is a different kettle of fish entirely. He has come in this year, had to play some games for us due to some injuries and various things, and he just looks ridiculous. And it's worth pointing out that he's not long turned 20 years old. That's, I think, the key thing for me. He looks like a player. If you were to look at him and didn't see his age, you'd assume he's probably 27, 28 years old. The fact that he's only 20 makes him scary good, and it's actually going to get to the point soon where he might start giving Reynoso a run for his money. The one area where Reynoso still has him is that aerial threat that he possesses, because he does have better jumping reach, but I tell you what, there's not much in it apart from maybe some of the mentals that he's got, but he is getting very, very good, very, very fast, and has actually managed to bang 16 goals for us this season in all competitions. Has been genuinely excellent, and he's worth an absolute fortune. This might be one of the best signings we've made in the entire save, and it was almost accidental. I say accidental, it was just, we were just looking at players and went, he'll do. Wasn't even any scouting involved. Now we come to our record signing, and chat have been ridiculing me ever since. This is Erik Bartosz, a 20-year-old Slovakian international who we signed from Fulham for £48.5 million. It's an overpayment. I'm going to have to admit this here. It is an overpayment, but I just really like what I saw in his attributes. He has that agility and balance that I absolutely love in the match engine this year. His tackling is okay, but he's a wing-back. He's got good crossing to begin with. He was still fairly young, getting international caps. He had the driven personality, and I believe that means there's some decent professionalism in there as well. It's a lot of money, I must admit. Part of the reason I paid more was because Fulham. It really is down to that, but at the same time, I also think, Fulham have incredible youth facilities, so there was a chance that this guy was genuinely going to be very good. It looks like he might not have that, not even elite, because I think he does have elite potential, but he doesn't have, that top echelon elite potential, perhaps the world-class level, maybe. Although, I think his attributes are very good. We'll see where he actually goes in his development. Has played a full season of 34 games on loan at Sweetie United this season, which means lots of European football at the highest level. I can't really ask for a better loan development for him, so if he does stay out there and starts to develop, we'll have to keep an eye on him over the coming years, but I still really like him. Chat, I'm not so convinced. It's somewhat underwhelming to be your record signing, I suppose. If I'd have shown you Moser and said he was our record signing, you'd have been like, sure, go off, sis. Erik Bartosz, maybe not so much. Then I continued spending lots of money. We brought in Kenny Schumacher, who isn't actually as quick as you'd expect him to be, if I'm honest. £23.5 million from Anderlecht. We love an overpriced Belgium around these parts. He does seem to have the decent potential. 2-star CA as well at 19 years old. Has found himself a loan at Sliema Wanderers, but though I believe that was only in the second half of the season that he got that. So he has started to play a bit more football over the course of that, which is good. Hopefully he can stay out there for a few seasons and start to develop a little bit himself, because we're kind of stacked in those positions. But I think there's a good player here, or it's just another overpriced Belgian, and I love those. Then we had some freebies. Juan Pablo Paz, who of course was a former Sirens player who I'd sold to Espanyol for basically nothing. He now returns for basically nothing. In fact, not even basically nothing, exactly nothing. But he is now worth £50 million. He's been on loan at Sevilla this year and has got nearly 30 goals in all competitions. I don't think he's even been playing as a striker, which is scary. I think we could legitimately sell this guy for £50 million this summer, because he's not really going to play for... I say he's not really going to play for us. He probably could, but I'd rather focus on our players that we developed ourselves. We could definitely use him, though, to fund some more transfers next year. What a player. And it was a similar story for John Rodriguez, who'd spent most of his time at Aston Villa, joins us on a free transfer. To give you an idea of the level that he is at, he's played 41 games for Liverpool on loan this season from us. They're paying all of his wages, and I'm hoping that, again, we can get around 50 million for him this summer if possible, because I think it's going to be the last year that we can really do that with him. But there's a lot of money sat in the pipeline with these guys. And then one more. This is Winston Vinken, who is a Dutch 31-year-old centre-back who has actually played for us this year. Not a lot. I brought him in to give us a bit of centre-back depth, because look at the state of his attributes, but he just hasn't quite been able to force his way into the first team, and as a result, he's asked to leave. However, again, he's worth around £50 million, and if we could get all three of these guys sold this summer, it could leave us with an absolutely insane surplus. Next, we have Anakin Shitu. I'm mostly showing you him because I signed him because his name is fantastic, and he's Hong Kong Nigerian as his nationality. He joined us, and then I went, actually, he's pretty good, has reasonable value, been on loan at Moster in the second tier this year. He looks like he might actually be a very good player. So sometimes the meme name signings can actually work out. Another particular favourite of mine is Wales Zaki. We haven't had a really good Egyptian in this save since the days of El Shazli. And when this opportunity came along to sign Wales Zaki from Ismaili for £2.5 million, I thought that's actually a reasonable price for once. Get him in. He's gone out on loan to Sweetie for the second half of the year. Hasn't played a great deal, but I think there's a quality player here, and if he could develop a little bit, he, again, could be an absolute worldie. We're not even done yet. We also signed Robert Svane from Copenhagen for £8.5 million, who's gone out on loan to Birkirkara, but hasn't actually made a single appearance for them, which is a little bit worrying. Although what it does say is if a guy like this can't get in their team, how good must their team be? Speaking of a lot to like, we also dropped £15 million on 26-year-old Janilson. Now, this was part of the reason why we were happy to let Gert Gillet go as well, because we were looking through some players to potentially replace Gillet when he inevitably aged out of the team. And Janilson wasn't actually really under consideration until we looked at him as a born midfielder on support, which is the role that, of course, he would play. He's got the work rate. Now, the one thing he does have, or rather doesn't have, is any aggression. This man is as passive as a butterfly, really, but he's got the work rate. Crazy as it is to say, I'm still not done. We also picked up Emanuele Iannone from Liverpool FC, 18 years old, Uruguayan, looks to be... He's got the tent poles. He's got the things, the requisite things I want out of a striker at this kind of age. Maybe lacking a little bit of pace, but he's been on loan at Melita, hasn't really played, and they have not had a good season anyway, so he'll most likely be back this summer. If I could keep him out there in the second tier for next year, though, that would be a very good sign for him. I think he could really kill it in the second tier of 2-star CA, and he can't start for them. Is actually wild when you consider how good that is. And then there's just more. Renato Rocco, Chilean international, 18 years old, left wing, £3.9 million, 2-star CA, 5-star PA, great pace, acceleration, he's got dribbling, he's got crossing, he's got it all. He's also been out on loan at Melita, but he has actually played. So they couldn't keep them up by any means, but at least I think he's the kind of player that has definitely shown that quality. And again, we've just really knocked it out of the park with some of these signings this year, and I don't even know why. We've just been on it, and I think the scouting has really just taken up a notch this year, and we've not been afraid to throw around a little bit more money on guys that we like the look of, basically. Sometimes when I see a guy and I'm like, oh, do I really want to spend £5 million on a guy I'm just not sure about? Now I'm just like, yep, do it. The last player is perhaps the one that maybe we should have said no to. I don't know. £15.25 million for Jan. That was his release clause at Espanyol. You can see that his value has actually become slightly less than that. I think he's a good winger. Who's he wanted by out of interest? Balsan Youth on loan. That is a really good sign. He could absolutely smash it there potentially. So maybe it would be worth it, but that is a lot to spend on a loan farm player, says the man who has a £48.5 million signing in the loan farm. But we don't talk about that. But that completes the transfers in. And as you can see, there was an absolute buttload of them. And I really do think it's going to help permeate through the league, looking at these higher quality players that are actually finding loans, which is crucial as well. You'll notice how many of those guys have found loans. Even if they've not played, I think we can reset that and get them to better clubs or more suitable clubs. So it's normally at this point in the video where I would talk about the league stuff. But today we're actually going to mix things up a little bit because I want to keep you on your toes. And we're going to talk about Europe first and then circle back to the league. So with the disappointment of last season's defeat to Manchester United, we just wanted to get our heads down and get back on the bike. And the game was actually very kind to us by providing us with probably the easiest set of Champions League fixtures that I've ever had. And unfortunately, once again, the caching got a bit messed up. So the first game is like this, as we won 4-0 over Milan with brilliant from Reynoso, 2 goals for him, 1 for Kravitz, 1 for Joshua Crompton, who has had a breakout season. It's taken him a while, but the affectionately known Crompy Wompy has had a much better year this year and is definitely a one to look out for now at 24. And then we had PSG, and you might think, hang on, Milan and PSG in your first 2 games. How is that easy? Wait till you see the rest of them. But we did win 2-0. Shurabadi Hajarowan, in his second full season of being a proper starter for us, he has just delivered this year. Mohamed Peters grabbing a goal as well, playing, of course, in Janos Toth Park, the brand new stadium, named after, of course, well, I say yours truly, my alter ego in the game. We are going to be changing that for the start of next season to potentially the Vida Arena, because it just worked, or the Vida Arena. It just kind of works. Then we had it much more difficult than we needed to against Celtic. Moser had given us the lead in this one. Joshua Crompton had added another one before Celtic got 2 goals back out of nowhere through Joseph Bull and Jed McNiff, what a name that is, before Johan Gudmundsson, who has made a habit of scoring late, incredibly important goals for us in Europe this season, gave us the victory in what should have been an easy win, but turned out not to be quite so simple. 3 wins out of 3 though, can't complain. That was until we could complain, when Fernando gave Valencia the lead out of nowhere in this game, and we were dominating yet again. Reynoso bailed us out 4 minutes later, but not exactly the response and the result that we were hoping for here, as this is the type of game that we should just be walking over every single year. Usually when we play Valencia or Villarreal, we put 5 past them, so this was disappointing. Speaking of putting 5 past people, luckily, this was the last tough game that we had, away at Atletico, who are of course a very good side, and actually took the lead through Hilal Khan, but it all kind of went a bit wrong from there. Gudmundsson actually grabbed a brace in the Champions League in this one. He's had such a good season. Shurabadi grabbed another one. There was an own goal in there too. Moser grabbed another one off the bench after Reynoso was injured. They had a red card, and it just kind of all went our way, and it's just nice to see these kind of results coming for us, you know. 4 wins out of 5, 13 points on the board, cruising. So naturally, we then cruise to another win. Gudmundsson yet again in this one. Moser and Facundo Pereira getting the goals. This was the period, I think, when Moser really started to explode, as you'll have seen on his progress chart. When Reynoso took that injury that meant he would miss 2 or 3 Champions League games and some league games in between, Moser just took it with open arms, played some brilliant performances, scored a lot of goals, did miss a lot of penalties. That's a story for another day. We've had a weird record with penalties this season. I think our penalty rate is actually below 50%. Then after Christmas, it got even easier. A 5-0 victory over Olympiacos. Peters, Reynoso, Hajaruan, a little penalty that was actually converted there by Kravitz, and a goal for Uriah Lahovi, who's had a brilliant year as well, despite his age. Not that I think he's ever going to stop playing football. Hajaruan with the man of the match, a goal and 7 key passes. It's just so lovely to see him flourishing now that Padilla is on the way out. And you'll notice that Padilla was, of course, on the bench in this game. He has decided to retire at the end of this season. So this is the last year we're going to have Jose Padilla. He's been at the club 19 seasons and vice captain as well. He's not the only one leaving as well at the end of the season. So is current club captain Mateus Paes, who I wanted to give a new contract to. He refused to, and then signed for Juventus on less money, which I think is a bit of a slap in the face from your long-serving club captain. But I guess that's just how things go. Not really. He's kind of tainted himself right at the end of his career at the club, so we're going to have a new leadership structure at the start of next season. Don't know who that's actually going to be just yet. We'll figure it out when the time comes. But another victory, and that left us with one more game. But that was, as it seems to be quite regularly, against Hamrun. And you know what that means? A little bit of match fixing between friends. I say that as if we shouldn't have won this game. You'll see to the bottom left here, the system that we decided to play for the entire 90 minutes of this game. And honestly, we should have won. We were the better side, despite playing this mozzarella stick of a tactic. I don't know, it looks like a tongue, honestly. I don't know what to say about it. Chat came up with it. I went, yeah, screw it, why not? And we damn near won the game with it. Reynoso and Pugliese getting us goals. Hefflinger, El Badwawi, and of course Paolo Mateus getting the crucial goals in this game for Hamrun, which saw them get the dub. And you know what? It doesn't even look that suspicious, honestly. We just played badly. No one will know. Don't tell the UEFA. But had we won this game, we could have potentially won the Champions League group. But we felt that it's always in these situations more important to give Hamrun a chance at finishing higher up or potentially qualifying for the next round of the Champions League. So how did that go for them? Well, in the end, we came 4th. As you can see, that dub, if we were to have got it against Hamrun, would have done the business, plus 18 goal difference over the course of the Champions League. If we'd beaten Hamrun, we would have won the group, but I don't know, that's so laissez-faire these days. If we'd have just got a better result against Valencia, maybe a draw would have been fine. And as it happens, that would have been fine for Hamrun, as in the end, they came 15th with 12 points. So actually, we wouldn't have even needed to throw that game to them, although would we actually? No, their goal difference would have seen them over the line, even if they, well, it's touch and go a little bit. It might well have done. If we'd battered them, they probably could have ended up coming 25th, and we would not have wanted that. But yeah, great results for them in the end. Got victories against us, obviously, Lyon and Celtic. Good results for them. But this is the key thing. The draws at home to PSG and Manchester City were the true things that made me go, okay, they've got something there. They're cooking a little bit. And then defeats to Nice and Ajax were a little bit disappointing, especially the Nice one. That one irked me, particularly when you look at Sweetie United, who banged 10 points for themselves this year and make it back-to-back seasons in the knockouts themselves. Wins against Nice, away from home, Malta and Marseille. They love beating a French side. Got a cheeky little draw against Sevilla in there too, before losing to Real Madrid, Bayern, PSG and Atletico. The games you'd expect them to lose to get a grand total of 10 points. Birkirkara, on the other hand, did at least manage 7 points. They weren't good enough to get through, but they did beat RB Leipzig and Rapid Wien at home. Got a draw against Shakhtar, gotta win that. And it was the Mulder away game, really. I think they have to be beating Mulder away from home if they have any chance of going through, and they should have done too. If they'd have won that game, they'd have literally qualified, but them's the breaks in these kind of things. But the most important thing to look at is I'm always looking at the points totals of the other Maltese sides in Europe in the Champions League. I think the record was 26. This year, Hamrun with 12, Sweetie with 10, and then Birkirkara takes the total to 29 points between them, which is just steady progress year upon year. So of course that meant that we got a lovely little bye through to the next round, and our opponents in the next round, it's just FM blessed us with FC Copenhagen in the round of 16. That could be a banana skin, but unlikely to be. Although I must admit, we did have to work very hard for it away from home before Facundo Pereira finally put us in the lead in Parken and gave us the result that we needed. But it was the home game when things really kicked off, as we absolutely annihilated them in the way that we should have done in the first leg, really. Shurabadi Hajaruan gets the goal. Otavio, Reynoso, Moser and Batista getting a goal. I have to show you Otavio's because it's one of the weirdest headers I've ever seen.
If only we could automate a way for me to extend all loans. That would be the true kind of automation I'd be here for.
But that was enough to push us through to the quarterfinals with a 6-0 win. And in that quarterfinal, we would play Bayern Munich, who had just knocked out Arsenal, which is good because it's an English side out, and I always feel like we're much better than Bayern. And so it proved to be. 4-1 victory away from home. Now, you can look at these stats and go, there's no way you should have won 4-1. Agreed. 2-1 would have been a bit harsh on Bayern, honestly, but I think I would have accepted that one. They actually equalised immediately after we took the lead. Ottavio scored another one, a banger from long range, an own goal, and another goal from Crompy Wompy, giving us a brilliant lead to take back home to Malta. I mean, 4-1 from the away leg. It's the dream. It's not even boring Sirens. We did, however, play much, much better in the home game. Giulio Mori did score Bayern's only shot on target of the game. It's just how things work. Pereira did get one, 2 more for Gonzalo Reynoso, giving us a 7-2 victory and sailing our way through to the semi-finals. I always find the quarterfinals for us are actually some of the more difficult ones because we have a league fixture in between our 2 quarterfinal matchups, whereas in the round of 16 and the semis, there is no league fixture usually scheduled in between those. So we get a full week of rest in between where we don't have to worry about rotating the squad. And unless you get training injuries, you're usually pretty set. So I always feel like the quarterfinal is the really important hump. And if we can get to the semis, usually we can get to the final. But the semis was still going to be very tough as it was against Chelsea. But then it proved not to be as we went to Stamford Bridge and won 2-1. Reynoso gave us the lead. Henrik Beck Hansen gave them an equaliser, but then another goal in Europe for Johan Gudmundsson. I think he's reached double digits this season in all competitions. It's genuinely insane. 91st minute winner. He actually came off the bench in this game to score that. His height really does help, but when he starts games, it doesn't feel like that he does much a lot of the time. But man, what a result that was at Stamford Bridge. And then we just kind of did the exact same thing in the home game. Arguably, Chelsea actually played pretty well in this game. This was a game where, if I recall correctly, I started Janelson instead of Babesi, who was looking a little bit squiffy. And at halftime, we were really, really struggling in this game. And at halftime, I brought on, as you can see from Janelson and Pereira's performances, Crompy Wompy and Babesi. And within literally 3 minutes, they had combined to set up a chance for Gonzalo Reynoso. And we just never looked back after that. Hajaran added another one. Then there was another one from Gudmundsson, because it's just what he does, giving us a 5-1 victory and sailing us through to yet another Champions League final. This was our 5th final in 6 seasons. Thing is, though, we've lost every single final we've played against an English side. Or more specifically, Manchester United, the only English side we've faced. We've also won every single final we've played against a Spanish side. 3 different Spanish sides. But none of that matters because we would play Porto in the final. And yeah, bang. About as professional a job as you could possibly imagine. Sirens 2, Porto 0, Pereira and Reynoso getting those second half goals. The first half was genuinely awful. I believe there was a combined 0.2 XG for both teams over the first half. Second half definitely picked things up a little bit, made a few substitutions. We just grew into the game, basically. Second half Sirens very much popping off to win our 4th Champions League in 6 seasons. And I guess Iberian club, maybe? It's an Iberian hoodoo. Who knows, basically? But it is another dub there in the Champions League final. So we get the result there, which is very, very good. The moment we saw we were playing Porto in the final, we as good as wrote this on as a win, frankly, because we are much better than them. So, of course, we won the Champions League, and you're not expecting to see any Maltese sides here. But what actually happened to Sweetie and Hamron? So Hamron would get the benefit of drawing Napoli, not a particularly easy draw, whereas Sweetie would get Manchester United, because of course they do. They always do. But there you go. Hamron, on the other hand, did get a very good 2-2 draw away at Napoli. However, they threw away a 2-goal advantage in the final 7 minutes. So less good, but we felt they could win the home game. Sweetie, on the other hand, put up a brave fight against Manchester United, and it was closer than you'd expect on paper as well, but they're just not good enough to beat Man United yet, as is evidenced by losing the second leg. That red card for Eric Bartok, we're not going to talk about it, it's fine. But then there was Hamron. And yeah, they lost 2-1 at home to Napoli. Napoli were the better side in the second leg. They actually played much, much better than they did in the first game. It's just disappointing. I thought Hamron, when they got that draw, they got top 16, I thought they could at least get through to the round of 16 this year and really start to make this progress. But at least we're seeing a bit more out of those sides now. One of these years, we're going to get all 3 of them through. And maybe next year's the year. Who knows? But that means you know all about Hamron, Sweetie, and of course, Birki Kara, and of course, us. But what happened in the Europa and Europa Conference League? So in the Europa League, we had Gudja, who just live there now, and Slima Wanderers, the shopping centre idiots that just can never do anything but disappoint us. And, well, why break with a tradition, eh? Let's talk about Gudja first, because they're the ones that are, by definition, good, yeah? So, they came 7th, 5 wins, 2 draws, 1 defeat, were right in there, never any real danger of not finishing top 8. They beat Shamrock Rovers, Sturm Graz, Dinamo Zagreb, Feyenoord and Nordsjælland with really comfortable wins as well. Got draws against Vitoria de Guimarães, probably could have done better in that game, honestly. Draw away at Galatasaray, did lose to Inter, but then when you look at some of the top teams in the Europa, like Dortmund, Inter, Galatasaray, Benfica, Real Sociedad, Villarreal, Monaco, Sporting, this is mostly like Champions League teams. It was an insanely stacked year. And then Wolves as well. Wolves are here too. I mean, who am I to put disrespect on Wolves, honestly, when Spurs came 24th and scraped in on goal difference? Part of the reason they managed to do that, by the way, was because they dropped points against Slima Wanderers at home. So that's the one thing Slima did do for us this season. Unfortunately, they couldn't do much else. They got 1 win, which was against Legia Warszawa, draws against Spurs and Villarreal, which were good, but losing to Lazio, Wolves, Nordsjælland, Hammarby, Vitoria de Guimarães, they're just not good. But of course, that meant Gudja got a bye through to the next round, where they would actually play against Red Bull Salzburg, who had just got off the back of knocking out Tottenham. They got a very good draw in Austria, 0-0 draw. We like these 0-0 away from homes. It means that they've got that great chance of winning the home game, which they turned around and did. Alden Zek, Hendrickson getting the goal, pushing Gudja through to the quarterfinals of the Europa League. But there's just so many quality teams in here, and they drew one of them in Dortmund. But did manage to get a 0-0 draw at home. But, you know, when I see that at home, I'm just like, I'm not sure. Shout out to Wolves being into here. Didn't even notice that at the time. But in the second leg, a 2-1 defeat. They were actually winning this game as well going into the final 10 minutes. But Brendik and Bricks getting the goals for Dortmund to knock out Gudja. But they're giving these teams a go now. And they really do seem to be suited at this level, and they will be playing at this level again next season anyway, provided they can hold on to Tabakaru. I think there's a hope in hell here. Inter actually went out to Wolves, did not notice that. So that just leaves us with Valletta, who were going into this season the only team in the entirety of the top flight clubs in Malta, and obviously some of the second tier, that had never played in Europe in this save. Obviously Valletta have in the past, but in this save, they'd never managed to qualify for it. So with them in the Conference League, we were just like, what are we even doing here? But to their credit, they came 8th in the group stage. We were very surprised at some of the results they were able to pull up. They beat Aberdeen, Universitatea, Maccabi Tel Aviv, and FCSB. Good results. They got 2 defeats as well, but it was Anderlecht and Brøndby. It was the Brøndby one. That was the one I thought that maybe they could have done better, but they weren't going to win the group anyway. The fact that they managed to sneak in on goal difference was a big deal, because I thought, actually, you know what? Maybe they've got something with the right draws, and there's not like amazing teams in here, particularly as Aston Villa were England's team, and they didn't even get into the group stage. So there was a little bit of a pathway emerging, but you've still got Wolfsburg, Eintracht Frankfurt, Stade Rennais. There's a lot of good sides here, Real Betis. But their reward for coming 8th would be to play 16th place RZ. We felt, you know, maybe they could give it a go, but these are the kind of games that the teams tend to fall over, but not our boys. Castaneda, Bala, and Bizimana gave Valletta a 3-1 victory in the Netherlands, which was somewhat surprising, honestly, really, particularly with Boavista beating Stade Rennais as well. Huge result for them. And then they went and did it again. Castaneda, yet again, a 4-1 victory on aggregate, and that pushes Valletta through to the quarterfinals of the Europa League, and we were genuinely impressed with them. But they would then have to come up against Boavista, who had knocked out one of the best sides in the tournament in Stade Rennais next, and we just thought, oh, okay, here we go. That wasn't until they went to Portugal and won. Mohamed Bala getting the dub, but, you know, 1 goal leads are very slender. But it didn't matter, because they got him in extra time. They were losing, technically going into extra time if you count it on the night. Grad van der Ven with a goal, Grabovats and Pereira, 2 goals in extra time, saw Valletta dig deep and find their way to the semi-finals of the Conference League. And look at the teams that are left here. Levski, Genk, and Eintracht Frankfurt. It was a really nice little pathway opening up, and they would face off against Levski Sofia in the semi-final. And a 3-2 victory was theirs in the home game. A hat-trick from Vilma Castaneda, 2 goals back from Andreev late on, I say late on, in the second half against Levski. That was the thing. They were 3-0 up, and then Levski get 2 back. And I'm just like, that is typical of Maltese sides, really. Not that it mattered, as in the second leg, Castaneda's goal in extra time was enough to send Valletta, of all people, to the Conference League final, where they would face off against the Belgian side Genk, who had knocked out Eintracht Frankfurt. We were emotional, honestly, when they somehow managed to go from being the only team in this whole save in the top flight that had never been in Europe to getting to a final in their first ever season. They've got some alright players, but they came 10th in the league this season. And then this happened. The final. Valletta 3, Genk 2. We watched it live on stream before our final rather. They took the lead through Spajic. They were brilliant. Vilma Castaneda gave them a second goal after 35 minutes. They were dominating Genk. They honestly could have had 3 or 4 in the first half. It was brilliant. And then out of nowhere, Driessen gets Genk's first real proper opening of the entire game. Then a deflected shot from the edge of the area deflects in, and it's 2-2. And I'm just thinking, we've seen this movie before. We know what happens. But then, in the 117th minute of extra time, ball looped to the back post, and who should be there but one of the heroes of the save for them, Grad van der Ven, to give them the dub, and they become the first Maltese side outside of us to win a European trophy. And of all people, it was bloody Valletta. And I just love the story of that. That means they'll be in the Europa League next year. And with them coming 10th, we'll just talk about it. Because coefficient-wise, on the year, we came 5th. In spite of all that, we came 5th on the year in the coefficients. England actually came below us this year due to having 9 teams in Europe and most of them kind of guffing it up a little bit. So we've actually gained on England this season. The problem is, of course, with England not getting top 2, they're going to have the bare minimum of teams in Europe next year. Their dilution is going to be tiny. I could see England dropping a 27-point season next year if they get things going their way, which they're England, they probably will. Shout out, though, to Italy having a 21-point year. Their best year for literally a long time, and that actually drops us all the way down to 4th. We were at one point looking like we might go to 6th, so that little run towards the end has definitely helped us, but you can still see the progress. These are the years that we've had 7 teams in Europe: 15.7, 17.2, 18.3, 19.2. We've gained coefficient every single year, which means there is progress being made. The problem is next year we've got 8 teams in Europe, And I get the feeling this could be a real problematic one for us, because with us having 8 teams in Europe, our dilution is going to be horrid. And Valletta are going to have to pull up some miracles for us. And the fact that England are not going to have that, this is the kind of year that I feel like could put England just completely out of reach in the meantime. So let's just switch back to the league briefly. And you now understand why I wanted to show you the league afterwards, because it would have revealed the fact that Valletta had qualified for the Europa League, and the only way they could have done that with this setup, even if they'd won the cup, for example, I believe, would have been to actually, yeah, because if I'd won the cup, it would have taken a position away from the league, and it would have shuffled this around. So the fact that there's 8 teams in Europe kind of gives it away. But you can see, 10th place for them. We win the league by 17 points. Hamron, Birkikara, and Sweetie back in Europe for the exact same order as last year. Goodyear get 5th again, provided they can hold on to Tabakaru, which could be touch and go because his contract for loan is up for extension this summer. That's a bit of a worry for me. Tarshin have been cooking up some magical stuff. They've got a lot of very good loan players. They're cooking something special, and I think they could be really good in the Europa next year. And then, of course, Balzan Youth, who, of course, want that loanee that we're interested in. I think they could absolutely kill it in the Conference League, but I'm a bit worried about the fact that they were so bad. Most of these teams were dreadful. Salima nearly got relegated. It's a shame they didn't. In the second tier, Nashar literally set a new record points tally with 81. At one point, they had 44 goals after their first 11 games, were hitting teams 6s and 7s. And then it kind of just tailed off a little bit. Plus 74 goal difference is still outrageous, but don't get me wrong, but not quite good enough for that. But they do get the record points tally. Seng Leia will be the ones coming back up with them. It's been a long time since we've seen them in the top flight. I think at least 15 years. Luta were right in the conversation as well, but the relegated sides, well, they just weren't really particularly interesting. I mean, like, I think Marsa was one of them. 35 points. It's crazy bad. There was a youth intake, but it's just really not worth showing for us anymore. Like, I will show you a youth intake if we get a proper player, but we just haven't had one in such a very long time, and I very much doubt that we will, unfortunately. Switching over to the stats. Reynoso, only 29 this season. It's definitely a drop down from his sort of close to 40s that he's had. I think the main reason for that is, like, he still got 11 in the Champions League, wasn't as prolific in the league, and didn't manage to fill his boots in the cup. Did get 18 goals for Chile in World Cup qualifiers, though, which is insanity. But all in all, still a good year. He's overperformed his XG. That's all you want. Pereira was once again very solid after a very, very, very poor start. But he did overperform again. Moser, and this is the thing, right? He had 20 XG. He should have scored more goals than he has. And that's a little bit of a concern. And that's why, for me, he's not ready to be even close to taking over from Reynoso yet. Reynoso's still got 2 or 3 good years in him, at least, before Moser even comes into the conversation. But he is happy to be a backup for the time being, and that's pleasing. You might notice there's no Pugliese in here. We incredibly were able to loan him to Hamron for the second half of the year, and he's already banged double digits. We get that loan extended, he could be crucial for them in Europe next year. Hajarowan, again, he's not exceeding his numbers, but he's at least just about hitting them. He's up to 4-star though. He's a very, very good player. I do worry that maybe he's not got quite the ceiling of some of the other players we've got here, but he's doing a very good job. I just don't know if he's ever going to be able to go beyond the numbers like what Reynoso and Pereira do, and like what Padilla did quite regularly as well. Kravitz underperformed a little bit. Crompton at least performed to his numbers, but 11 goals, 10 assists, double digits in both categories, and he only played 16 games from the start. But Bassi, 21 assists. Mohamed Peters, 20 assists. It's actually insane, those two. Only the 6 assists for Lahovi this year, 7 for Hans Zimmer. They're good backups. Lahovi, in the end, actually got 6 goals, but he got most of those in the first month of the season, including a hat-trick in a league game, which was very strange. Just to give you a quick look at Hajarowan, you can see that he really is developing into a fabulous footballer. He's still only 21 years old. He is wanted by some big sides as well. So there's definitely a quality player here. I just wonder about how much better he can get beyond his current level. That's the thing about him. Shout out as well to Callum Brooks, who, again, has just been steadily developing over the course of this year. Some injuries to Kravitz for the first time in a while has allowed him to play 37 times with 20 starts. The weirdest thing, you see he's unhappy at the moment. The weirdest thing about this is basically he's got impact sub squad role. His playing time was impact sub. He then complained to say that he didn't think he was going to be good enough. I then tried to offer him more playing time and he said no. Man has played 37 games this season and played well. It's just like he wanted a reason to complain. That's the only thing I can put it down to. It's so annoying. Probably also worth checking in on Valenhout. This was his first season back at the club after failing to agree a loan extension at Sweetie after being there for 6 years. Disappointing, but we felt that we kind of needed him anyway, and I think he'll have a more important role next year after both Paez and Winston Vinken move out the way, and you'll see that will leave us with only 4 starting quality centre-backs, so we'll probably have to sign someone big in the summer. That's probably going to be our biggest goal over on stream today, is to either find the guy or actually sign the guy today, because he's bound to be out there. And as for how the team's mostly set up this season, it's been Reynoso, Hajarowan, Pereira, Peters, not Gudmundsson, usually Jose Otavia, but of course he was injured right before the Champions League final, which was fantastic, which of course meant he missed the game. Kravitz and then Babesi, with chosen one, Vieira and Paez. It's been a bit of a, mostly it's been these 3, with Gudmundsson as well. They've sort of been switching in and around, and obviously Björk Sultan doing his wonderful best in there. But it's been a really solid team for us this year, and I think next year Some of these guys will be a year older, but most of them are still well within the realms of not losing any quality anytime soon. They're still really decent, and we'll be freshening things up a little bit, I think. Now, to the Malta national team, there isn't really a lot to say. They've actually dropped by a position this year. Did steal a manager from Malta. Don't know why they thought that was a good choice, but there you go. He is now the guy in charge. He's got a very wide neck and head, and I say that as someone with a very wide neck and head. I see a lot of myself in you, Carl. Point being, they've dropped a place. Absolutely. I mean, they were fine in World Cup qualifying, became 4th in their group. They're unlikely to do much there. What I will say, though, is their Nations League group with Gibraltar, North Macedonia, and Iceland, that feels like one they could potentially get some good results in. So I'm excited to see what happens in these games. Might just set a tend now while I'm thinking about it. To the loan farm. First time in a while I've brought you to a loan farm update, and it's actually at -1 because we are right down on the loan farm now, because we are, again, removing crap players from it that weren't getting loans or were playing in loans that didn't really matter anymore and replacing them with really good players on loan. That's been the general gist, and you'll see what I mean when I show you the general quality of the loan farm now. Remember when I was showing you this and we had like 1 2-star CA guy out on loan, and that was when we were a much worse team as well. Now, I mean, look at the state of it. It's absolutely stacked. Now, you'll see a few foreign loans in here. These are just ones as we're trying to get them some money so we can sell the players. Robin Brower is one of those. Pugliese at Hamron, 10 goals and 11 appearances. If I can extend that loan, I will be amazed. Tabakaru, 21 goals again this season. If he can extend that loan, brilliant scenes. Palamateus as well. He's also 3.5 stars. He's insanely good. Blaž Král, the reason he's on loan at Man United is we were trying to see if we could do a part exchange deal that would cost them a lot of money, as we've noticed that some of the deals that we've done for other sides, like for example with Tehavali Huri, that's costing Goodger £6 million over the course of 2 years. We didn't have any control of that because it was a part exchange, but I wondered if we could do a part exchange with one of our good players to someone like Man United and see if we could get a massive loan fee as calculated by the game. It didn't work. Luckily, Man United got knocked out of Europe early, so it didn't matter, and we got some opportunities for Blaž to get a little bit of football. So not the end of the world, but yeah, wouldn't try that one myself. Point is, though, the loan farm is popping off as per. Domestically, Owen Sinnott got 28 in 26 for Nashar, which is insane. The most assists was actually Owen Sinnott as well. He's had an unbelievable season, has the Irish striker come winger. Don't know what it'd be like in the top flight next year. Probably useless, but that's just how it goes, right? Budgets, I mean, the budgets are insane. We have a £400 million transfer budget. We've actually lost 22 million this year, but that's still with us signing players at a rate that even I'm struggling to comprehend. It's almost impossible for us to lose money most years these days because we make so much money with our player sales. Now, where we have to have a financial crisis, which could happen, that could potentially be a save killer, just because it would hamper us and the rest of Malta so badly for like 5 more years that it would become such a slog. There's also the potential that it could just get to the state where it just looks like there's no way of catching England in a reasonable time frame. And at that point, I wouldn't want things to stagnate too much. So we do have some plans in the pipeline for a different stream save, which should still get stuff on YouTube for, were that to happen. It would be Outcast to Icons. For those of you that watched the channel back in the day, you'll know all about that, and that would be quite exciting too. Just to tide us over until F125, because if we were to do 5 more months of this at that point, I suspect that things could get very stale, and I don't really want that from any point of view, right? And I know that the quantity of content on the channel has been dead for a while, I must admit, with me being away for a little bit, being ill. I'm trying to move house at the moment as well. In addition, with all sorts of things with the delays, that's thrown a lot of the content I was trying to do, sort of change the timelines, a lot of things. But now we seem to be back on things. I've got an agent video coming soon. I've got the loan farm video coming soon. I've got a longer project, which is one I'm really excited for you guys to see, as well as a long-term project too, which you won't see till probably next year. But other stuff will be in the way of that as well, because we found some new ways to break the game, which I'm sure you'll be very interested in. So join us over on stream, because that's what we're going to be doing today. Well, not that. We're going to be trying to find a centre-back and just trying to build an absolutely monstrous team, because it's what we do. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, drop a like. I would really appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Lots of stuff coming soon. I'll see you guys very soon. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.